And a good Monday evening. Welcome into Time Out here on TVNB. Jim Hennessy along with Barry Johnston, and we're glad to welcome into the studio tonight Aaron Kennedy, the voice of the St. John Flames. So, Aaron, nice to have you here.
Seems like in another life, in another medium, we did this before. I don't know, I'm having a little deja vu all over again.
It's a little familiar, no question about that. Of course, we talk about Thursday night coming up. Flames, sixth season on the ice here at Harbor Station. What can we expect?
Well, there's going to be a lot of excitement before the game on Thursday night as the Flames unveil their championship banners from last season, the Atlantic Division, the Chrysler Cup, and the Eastern Conference Championship banners. So that's going to happen about 20 to 7 would be a good time to be in your seats on Thursday evening before the opening face-off at 7 o'clock. The Flames and the Maple Leafs, of course, this season, the weeknight games, and including the Saturday night games, are going to start at 7 as opposed to 7:30 last night through the week, or last season through the week. So that's something that the Flames have changed this year to sort of make it a little bit more user-friendly for families to get the kids home and in bed at a much more decent hour as opposed to last season. Flames have made a few more roster moves today, as a matter of fact. They've got more guys coming down from Calgary. Chris Dingman, Nat Domicelli, Travis Brigley have been sent from the parent club, and Jamie Allison is going to be here just for the weekend, it would appear. The Flames play at home on Thursday versus the Leafs, on Saturday versus the Pirates, and on Monday versus the Leafs. With the parent club off to Tokyo, Jamie Allison has been sent here to St. John. So those are four guys that Flames fans will be very familiar with this weekend.
Now, the one name that comes to mind is Chris Dingman, of course, because Dingman, when he was sent down last year, said that he didn't want to be here, so they ship him back up to Calgary. Is he a face that's going to be here for the entire year, or is it going to turn into another, I want to play in Calgary, I don't want to play for this organization whatsoever?
Yeah, well, he wasn't actually here at all last year. He was here 2 seasons ago, and last year surprised a lot of people by making the parent club, and he played in most of the games, but he didn't get a lot of minutes in each of the games. So he's a guy that basically right now has lost his spot to Dave Roach, who they acquired in the Ken Reggett deal from Pittsburgh in the offseason. So Roach is in Calgary. He's that tough guy, the big winger that they were looking for. They were looking for that aspect from Dingman and didn't get it, so he's here in St. John, and certainly he's not going to be happy about being here, but he might be here for a while.
Of course, the newest face to make mention of with the St. John Flames this year is behind the bench. That is Rick Vaive, former Toronto Maple Leaf, a lot of NHL experience, some head coaching experience in South Carolina last year, the past couple of years. Now all of a sudden he's thrown into the AHL frame. How's he going to do? Oh,
I think he's going to do fine. He's got a winning track record in South Carolina, 5 seasons with the Stingrays of the East Coast League, won a championship. His winning percentage is up around the .700 mark in those 5 seasons, which is simply phenomenal. 4 of the 5 seasons, that team won at least 40 games, and you think, wow, 40 games, that's a lot. Especially when you're only playing 70 in that league, so that tells you an awful lot more that he's won at that level, and I think you can compare him to Bill Stewart in that he's won where he's been before, and that was the same thing with Bill Stewart, and he was able to step in and win here, and I think Rick Vaive is going to be able to come in and he's going to take to the community. He's a very city-oriented guy. He's going to buy a house here, and his family is going to join him here as well, and he's someone that you'll be able to see out around town and in the supermarkets and buying groceries, and he's a very friendly guy, and I think St. John fans are really going to get to like him.
We look forward to it.
Aaron, we were talking about Toughness in Calgary. How's St. John going to look this year for Toughness? I noticed in the first, in Fredericton on Friday night and last night, they didn't seem a whole lot of toughness out there.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot of fighting if you're looking at that sort of toughness, which surprised me at this time of year when you had guys that are looking to earn spots in St. John, that usually one way to get noticed if you're not scoring goals is to drop the gloves and everybody notices you. And there was one fight in the game on Friday night involving Jeremy Thompson, who was sent down to Johnstown after that game, and last night, Matt Odette, the second-year defenseman, who of course is going to be here this season, got into a fight with Gordie Dwyer of Fredericton. So there really weren't as many fights as you probably would have liked to have seen, but you look at a guy like Dingman, who's a big guy that can probably get involved in that sort of thing, and Matt Odette, who's another big defenseman that really has to play that sort of a role. He's a nice guy off the ice, but he has to be a tough guy and a mean guy to play against on the ice, and you have to see a little more of that from him like we saw last night.
The defense looked pretty good this year with Bancroft back as the veteran and, as you say, Odette back for his second season. Do we expect any more from Calgary in the way of defense? I know we get Jamie Allison coming down for a few games.
When you get Jamie Allison coming down this weekend, you look at a guy like David Cooper and Eric Chiron. These are guys that are going to be interchangeable parts with what goes on in Calgary this season. It'll be interesting to see how much Steve Smith plays, the veteran who was an assistant coach in Calgary last year and is back this season playing as a defenseman. But he's a guy who's probably going to play maybe 60 games depending on how his back holds out. So you're you're going to need that extra defenseman, maybe moving back and forth between St. John and Calgary on a fairly regular basis. Sammy Helenius has made the Calgary Flames right now, which a lot of people in St. John, that'll leave them scratching their heads, to be sure, and with good reason. He was a guy who didn't play well here last year, but it's just the size, and he's a very big guy, and size is something you can't teach. It's a bad cliche, but it's a correct one. So you look at Sharon, Cooper, and Bancroft is here for now. Probably won't be here very long. They want Chris O'Sullivan to play forward. Mickey Ellick, a guy we saw this weekend, played last night, was the first star in the game on Friday night in Fredericton from the Canadian national team. As a matter of fact, he was the only guy who played with the national team all of last season, who also played in the World Championships, when all the NHL guys come in and sort of move the other guys out. I thought he played well this weekend, so those are some of the guys that you can really get used to seeing this year. And Derek Walzer, who's the guy that had just huge numbers last year in the Quebec League, 110 points. Certainly the Quebec League is a little more offensive-minded than the other junior leagues, but 110 points is still a gaudy number, and I thought he played well, and you can certainly see that he likes to move the puck and can get involved offensively, which is something the Flames didn't really have a whole lot of last year, aside from Eric Sharon and Chris O'Sullivan later on. They weren't getting a lot of points from the defensemen. Speaking
of last year, of course, they come one game shy of winning the whole thing, the Calder Cup. You followed the team. In your opinion, what's going to be the big difference this year? Can they contend again and get that close?
Well, I mean, it's always tough to repeat the success that you had from one season, and a lot of people you hear on the street, well, it's going to be tough to match or surpass the success of last season, but I think that's good. If it was easy to surpass the success that you had last season, you probably didn't have a very successful season, so that's what you want in any competitive sports, and certainly at the professional level. You want to be able to do just as well or better than you did last year, and obviously for the St. John Flames to do better than they did last year, they'll have to have a Calder Cup championship. Is it realistic? Who knows at this point in time. Calgary is going to struggle, which may help this team. The goaltending is going to be sensational. You're going to have Jean-Sébastien Giguère back here. He's going to be here for sure. He had to accompany the parent club to Tokyo because they needed 3 goaltenders in case one gets injured.
Sure.
He's going to be here with Igor Karpenko as his backup. They want Tyrone Garner to play a lot of games, so he'll likely go back to Oshawa of the Ontario Hockey League, but he's a guy you're going to see here in the future. But with Giguère basically as the pillar behind everybody, and then you look at the defense with a Bancroft who's here for a little while, a Sharon who'll be back and forth, a Cooper, and Ellick, a Walzer, the guys that we mentioned, and then up front, Ronald Petrovicki, a rookie, had 3 goals last night, 113 points last year in the Western League. Sergei Varlamov, the Canadian Junior Player of the Year last year, 119 points in the Western League. Martin St. Louis, you don't know if he's going to be up for the whole season. Travis Brigley is back, a second-year pro, looking for a lot of big things from him. John Tripp has to have a better season than he did last year, a huge disappointment with just 1 goal. So, you know, the guys are there, the pieces are in place, and it just depends on how they fall together with Rick Vide. But I know if you talk to anybody, and even people in the Flames organization at this time last year, they knew they were going to have a solid team, but I don't think they thought they were going to go to a Game 6 in the Calder Cup final.
You look at Calgary's goaltending situation right now, bringing the veteran Kenny Reggett in, and then, of course, having a little bit of less experience behind him, Jean-Sébastien Giguère, and the list goes on. Do you see similarities in Calgary's lineup goaltending-wise this year as to what Montreal had last year with Andy Moog?
Well, Calgary has a lot of problems. Goaltending might not be their biggest problem, but they do have a lot of problems. They're going to have Reggett and Moss up there this season, and it's going to be interesting to see. They want Reggett to play the bulk of the games last year with Moog and Thibault in Montreal, and they had to bring up Theodore at the end of the season as they did the previous year to try and win some games late in the year. But Calgary is not going to be a very good hockey team. I think it's safe to say. Last year, they thought they had a better team than the season before, and they actually went down in points last year. Brian Sutter's first year behind the bench, first time he's never made the playoffs as a head coach, and that team actually regressed as opposed to showed some progress from the previous season. And this year, it's going to be tough going again in Calgary. You look at any of those magazines, and there are dozens of them on the racks down at the bookstore. None of them predict Calgary to make the playoffs, and it's going to be a very tough go. They didn't play well in the preseason, won only 2 or 3 games. They're going to have a tough time there this year again, but last year it was shown that even if the National Hockey League team doesn't have a good season, you can still have success on the farm.
No question about it. Talk a little bit about last year's team on the farm. Head coach Bill Stewart leaves a little bit out of town under a cloud of not really mystery, but kind of a cloud of a lot of people going, why would this guy want to leave after having the successful season that they did last year? Your feelings on that?
Well, Bill Stewart was always on the fast track to get to the National Hockey League. He's a guy that has been touted as a great coaching prospect in the National Hockey League. He hasn't spent a whole lot of time anywhere he had been in the past. Of course, he was in Europe for a year. He had that 1 year in the Colonial League when he won the Coach of the Year honors. In the Ontario League, he was runner-up for Coach of the Year, won the Ontario League Championship with Oshawa, and then moved right on. And he said, look, I've won everywhere I've been, and he came here, and this team was able to win. So he was a guy who didn't want to be here for very long, and he had some problems. Some of them were public, some were not so public with Calgary management, but it was obvious throughout the course of the season that Bill Stewart wasn't getting along with the folks in Calgary, but he did what they wanted him to do. He developed players. Martin St. Louis and Clark Wilm were in Calgary to start this season. People probably wouldn't have thought that at some point last year, and St. Louis was a guy they just picked up 3/4 of the way into the season. So you talk about development, those two guys have been developed. You talk about winning, he did that too. So you can't say anything bad about Bill Stewart. He was a great coach. He was a great guy when he was here. Still a good coach, and he's still a good guy with the Islanders.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Clark Wilm for a sec, because he was a fan favorite, no question about it. Steady Eddie, as he was called around the rink. Some good things have been said about him out in Calgary, and he's sticking with the team so far.
Yeah, he's lucky in a way that Calgary really doesn't have any centerman to speak of other than Andrew Castles, who's not a frontline centerman. So Clark Wilm is going to go out there and he's going to be the fourth-line centerman. One thing you've got to love about Clark Wilm, and this is what Brian Sutter loves about him, he works. He is not afraid to get his nose dirty. He's a farmer from Central Butte, Saskatchewan. That's all he's known his whole life, is how to work. And that's what Brian Sutter stands behind the bench and watches. If you're going to work and compete, if the results aren't there, at least you're giving that effort, and that's something that you're going to get from Clark Wilm night out and night in and night out. And that's why right now he's on a plane somewhere over the Pacific Ocean heading to Japan, because he's going to show that the effort will be there.
And that's good for him, because he really did a great job on solid all the way around last year.
Oh, and the trip to the final was great for a guy like him, because he just got more and more ice time and more confidence as the season progressed.
As we wrap things up here, let's flip the page to the NHL, Canadian NHL. Can the teams continue to survive, in your opinion, with the bouncing dollar around? And you always hear about the contracts. They can't sign this player. It's turning into almost like a Montreal Expos scenario for the NHL with the Canadian teams.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago when you look back to the late 80s and into the early 90s, where you had the Edmonton Oilers winning 5 Stanley Cups, Montreal won a cup, Calgary won a cup. The Canadian teams had the opportunity to compete and have a legitimate chance of being a Stanley Cup contender. This year, are there any Canadian teams that are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender? Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
Certainly not Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. I don't think so, and that's probably the way it's going to be. It's tough to compete against that American money and the American dollar right now, so it's a tough go. And we see the program last week on the CBC that people are wondering, you know, this is where the Canadian game has its roots, and Gary Bettman says they want to keep focused in Canada, but really it's obvious by the way things are going that there's a lot more interest in the United States, and certainly markets that no one ever thought they'd be playing hockey, like Nashville, Tennessee, and Southern California.
Broadcasting on a new station this year, how's that feel so far?
Country 94, we debuted last night with the preseason game against Fredericton, and the season will begin on Thursday night, all 80 games. It's same gig for me, just a different outlet.
Fabulous. Look forward to it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll be back with more right after this.
Shift into gear and learn more about restoring vehicles and keeping your car in working order. That's Shift. Mondays at 7:30 and again Sunday at 1:30. Only on Channel 10, TV NB.
Each year in Canada, hundreds of fires are started by children playing with lighters and matches. Children as young as 18 months can operate a lighter and start fires. The consequences couldn't be more deadly. Keep lighters and matches out of sight and out of reach of children. A message from Health Canada and this broadcaster.
Curiously enough, most of us are more concerned about fighting the downward pull of nature than we are about a problem with far more gravity: diabetes. If you're over 45 or someone in your family had it, you're at risk. Please call the Canadian Diabetes Association, because you need to know.
This is TVNB, the New Brunswick channel, owned and operated by Fundy Communications.
The basic rules are they're not allowed to touch the ball with their feet. They have to play with the stick, and it has to be on the flat side of the stick, so just one side of the stick. No hitting with the feet. It can't really touch any part of the body. There's no offsides, and there's a circle or a semicircle at the end of the field in front of the goalie's net, and the goal is to get inside that semicircle and shoot on the net. They can't score unless they're inside the semicircle.
And the goalie can only block the ball and kick it. They can't like cover it or scoop it like in hockey. Yep.
2 35-minute halves.
35-minute halves.
Yeah, basically straight time.
It has 11 players, similar to soccer. I guess your layout with fullbacks, midfields, and forwards are similar to the soccer field. The goalie has full equipment so that I guess they're protected.
We started practice about a week before school started, and our first game was, I think, maybe the 14th of September, right around that time.
So how many games have you had now, and what's your record?
Oh, we've had 5 games, I think, and we're 1 tie and 4 losses.
Yeah, it was a hard loss today.
Yeah, it was a hard loss today.
Yeah.
And a good Monday evening. Welcome into Time Out here on TVNB. Jim Hennessy along with Barry Johnson tonight. Barry, as always, nice to have you here.
Thanks.
And before we get rolling, we just want to, at the bottom of your screen, we're going to show a phone number and a fax number for you. Now, if you do have some sports scores to drop off to us, or maybe you just want to drop off your schedule with hockey season just around the corner, I'm sure there are quite a few out there, please feel free to do so at either one of these numbers. If you don't get a live human being on the telephone number, don't panic, just leave your message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Barry, a huge weekend for the St. Malachy Saints High School boys baseball team at Memorial Park. Saturday afternoon, all the marbles on the line. They're ready to go for the championship, and that they do. And with the call from Memorial Park on Saturday afternoon, here's Dave Ring.
Against Matthew Martin Matadors, and St. Malachy's winning their game.
Right, here's the pitch. Swing and a line drive back through the middle. That may score 2 runs. Yeah, bobbled by the center fielder, so that's going to allow the...
Here today, he's in a position right now. He's thrown 26 pitches already here in the first inning.
Championship game. Here it is. Fastball swung on a miss, so a big strikeout for Mike Pierce.
Put her in play, and they should get a run here.
There's a wild pitch, and here comes going to score standing up, Ronnie Barton. Here's the 2-2 pitch. Line in the left field. Pierce is going to try to score. Here's the play at the plate. It's going to be a beat it out. A good run by Pierce, and Tom King waved them in. Swinging a ground ball, hit into right field. That's going to be an RBI. Here comes Higgins in to score. The throw is coming in. Way too late. Higgins puts in 2 pitch coming up by Harris. Swinging a line drive into center field. That's going to score Barton. He's got good speed. And the play is just going to come in, cut off by the first baseman. Strike pitch coming up. There's a line drive in the left field. Left fielder coming on and drops the ball. And 2 more runs come in to score.
On second base.
Here's the pitch. There's a line drive. That's going to score a run. And the ball is bobbled. Now he's coming all the way in. So Garnett was going to hold up, but he decided to come. So we'll give the guy an RBI.
Yeah.
He was coming.
He was coming, and it's an RBI for Timmy Edison. And St. Malachy Saints fans getting into the game now, David.
Gibbs hit the fly ball deep, way out left center. That's way, way back, and it is gone. A home run to left center field. A towering drive, just kept carrying back, and the little fella comes up big with a 2-run shot by Ben Gibbs.
You know what they say, Dave? Touch all 4. He really got into that one, put a charge into it. And, you know, he hit that ball into the wind too, David. I mean, it's kind of a crosswind, but he really turned on that ball to give St. Malachy's a huge lead. You see the players celebrating the plate, and here comes the replay on it. The pitch, the middle part of the plate, and Ben Gibbs turns on it, and the ball just keeps carrying and carrying as the outfielders run back, but it's over the green fence, David. 2-run shot. St. Malachy's leading the game right now, David. The full count with 2 out.
There he goes. Swing, and that is off the glove.
Oh, another different play we've had today, David. Nice play out there.
Line drive
Yes.
off the pitcher, and the Saints gun that throw in and got the runner going back to second base. A great relay in, and the St. Malachy Saints have won the New Brunswick High School Baseball Championship. They're going crazy out there, the fans, the players. Okay, so the final score, 13-4. As you can see, the Saints are the champions. A great relay in to get that 3rd out, but that...
And there you see the St. Malachy Saints high school boys baseball team celebrating Saturday afternoon at Memorial Field. A few of the students getting involved in the celebration as well. And hey, why not? A well-deserved victory from the team. Tom King, of course, leading the helm, and a fantastic job done throughout the season. Barry, you had a chance to be at Memorial Park for that game that afternoon. And unbelievable the amount of balls that were leaving the ballpark, long balls, considering how the wind was howling coming in off the bay.
Well, the way that wind was blowing, I'm surprised that any of the home runs went out straight center field. I would figure most of them would have went out over the right field fence, but I was talking to Tom King earlier in the day, and they hit, I believe, 3 out that morning, and I was really surprised when he said that because of the way the wind was blowing. I didn't think there was going to be any long balls at all.
Absolutely. So congratulations to the St. Malachy Saints high school boys baseball team on a fantastic season and bringing home the provincial crown. Still with baseball, we got to talk about it. We're right into the drive now. 4 teams are left. We've got the Braves going up against the Padres on Wednesday night, or the Padres Braves, I should say. They will be starting in Atlanta. And in the American League Championship Series, this is going to be a beauty. We have got the Yankees playing host to the Cleveland Indians, and that game gets underway tomorrow night. Your feelings on, let's start with the American League.
Oh, I think you have to go with the Yankees. Their pitching staff is just phenomenal. I mean, with Cohen and Wells, you know, they're your number 2 men right there, obviously. And with the way they were pitching during the regular season, it's got to be the Yankees. I think it's going to be the Yankees and possibly Atlanta in the final, I think.
Okay, so you're taking the Yankees in the American, you're taking the Braves in the National?
Yeah.
You don't think the Padres can even give these guys a chance?
No, I'm going with Atlanta. I'm going with the old tomahawk chop there, and I'm going to go with Atlanta, I think, on that one.
I'm going to change. I'm going to go the exact opposite. I think the Indians have been there over the past 4 or 5 years. They've come close, and I think this is their year to break through. They are going to make it back to the World Series, and I'm going with the Padres just as a Cinderella story because they've had a phenomenal year. Their pitching staff's totally come together with the addition of Greg Vaughn in the outfield, Jim Leyritz, who has just been pounding the ball in the first series, round trippers left, right, and center. So I'm going with the Padres on that one. So we move along. Back to the local scene, and we've got a lot of stuff coming up. Of course, the local hockey scene really kicking into gear. You've got a few things to run down?
The Midget Flames, St. John Midget Flames, played 2 games on the weekend. They lost 1 and tied 1. They played the Acadian Peninsula on Saturday and won convincingly 8-5 in that game. And they looked really good that game compared to what apparently they played the previous weekend.
And I think the Midget Flames fall under the same category as the St. John Flames, seeing that they did so well last year, made it to the national championship. They won the provincial championship. And they lost a lot of other key players from last year's team, so they got to start pretty much. Greg Leland, Ivan Votor have to start from scratch, but when you've got 2 hockey-minded gentlemen like themselves leading the helm, I don't think it'll take long for this team to get back.
No, I don't think so. I think one of their key players they lost because of age restraints and whatnot is their goaltender Adam McNamara, who's now playing Junior A in Moncton for the Gagnon Beavers down there. So it'll be interesting to see. But Jeff Votor, Ivan's son, scored 3 goals on Saturday, so hopefully maybe he's going to be their offensive threat this year.
How does this team look between the pipes?
A little shaky. They're still carrying 3 goaltenders. They've got 1 signed, and they're just kind of looking at the other 2, which are on the bubble. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. Okay,
let's switch gears here for a minute. Senior hockey, of course, became a big draw once again at the LBR. Steve Vare brought back senior hockey to town, and a lot of people were extremely ecstatic about that. Now all of a sudden he finds out there's not enough teams in the league. Truro wins. They have to pull out. Now all of a sudden they're right back to scratch. There will be no league this year. They have to wait for a year. Will the fans stick around, and will the team be able to rebound? I mean, players, when you go and don't play hockey for a year in an organized league, then try to get it back up and running, That's a difficult task. Can they do it?
I think they can. I mean, senior hockey has made a name for itself regardless anyway. It's not like a junior team coming in where you got to try and build in a fan base, but with senior hockey, it's been around for years, and especially in this city. They won't have a problem with that. And speaking of junior hockey, the Thomas Construction Junior B hockey team, they were holding tryouts over the weekend, and I think they're going to be looking pretty good this year as Merle Stewart, the head coach this year. John Cowell's going to look after the assistants' work, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, hard to believe. We're out of time once again. It just continues to fly right by. I'd like to thank Aaron Kennedy for dropping by. We wish the Flames all the best in their upcoming season, and to all the rest of the hockey teams as well. Barry, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for dropping by.
Thanks.
And we'll talk to you again next Sunday. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been watching Time Out right here on TVNB.